Thank you for joining me.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So first, can you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, including like your name, your career, and your connection to like ADHD?
Sure. My name is Ben Brainard. I am a comedian. Um, there's a lot. That's a big question. I've done so many things. My career. So I out of high school, I went to college for engineering. I was going to be a mechanical engineer, and then I got bored, so I stopped going. And when I dropped out, I joined the army, and then I moved to Orlando, and I started doing stand-up comedy. So I was doing stand-up for a while, and then the world shut down from COVID, and I turned to online sketch comedy, and so now that's like the main thing that people know me for is online sketch comedy, where I dress up as all of the states of America, sit down at a table, and talk about how nobody's doing well.
Yeah.
And if all of that doesn't already explain my connection to ADHD, hi, I have ADHD.
Yeah. Your videos are really funny, and I think you did a good job with Arizona.
I do a lot of research. There's a lot of rabbit holes to fall down.
Yeah. And then when did you first hear about ADHD, just like in general?
Well, I don't remember.
Okay.
I imagine it was a long time ago, probably when I was a kid. Whether or not I like took it seriously or thought anything of it is, up for debate, but I probably heard about it when I was real little.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so when were you diagnosed with ADHD? And was there a main reason or was it just a mix of reasons?
So I was diagnosed in January of 2020, which is the perfect time to do anything, And there was a small mix of reasons. So I had kind of thought that I had ADHD already at that point, but this was well after I had dropped out of college. This was after I had started doing comedy and all that. And so it really didn't help much. I think I was working at a call center at the time, and I knew like I was just having the worst possible time trying to actually get call center work done, just calling people all day. And at that point, I was like, maybe let me look into some medicine. The other interesting factor in this is when I was at basic training, the guy that slept in the bunk next to me for those 10 weeks had a master's in family psychology. And after like 8 weeks, he was like, hey, man, I think I've diagnosed you. And I was like, why would you say that out loud with no other context? And so he just started telling me a few things that he noticed about me and like what that possibly meant. And he's like, when we get out of here, man, I'll send you some information and some resources and stuff. And I looked it up and I was like, damn, okay, I'm a little scratch and dent. And I just booked an appointment at like a local psychiatrist. And I walked in and I was like, hey, I think I have ADHD. And he handed me a piece of paper and he was like, fill out this form. And before I even finished it, he was like, no, you have ADHD. Yeah. And I was like, well, that felt rude.
So you didn't have to take like a test or anything? Because I know I had to do that.
That was the test. He made me take the test, but before I finished the test, he was just watching me take it. And he was like, nah, you got it for sure.
Okay. And then you mentioned the military and how you were in basic training. And I was going to ask you, do you think that having ADHD like impacted some of your experience with that or?
Oh, I'm sure it did. The weird part about it is that I think military life is really good for people with ADHD in certain senses because it's so structured, it's so regimented. All of the little stuff is basically just taken care of for you. Like you never have to think about what you're going to have for dinner. You have 3 options. You just pick one, man. I honestly just picked the one that looked the worst for me. They would color code it. That's a fun fact they don't really tell you. There's a red one, a yellow one, and a green one. And I would always pick the red one because it was probably fried. And so I don't know. There's probably a few things that for sure affected my military career because of the ADHD. Like I agreed to do a lot of things without actually getting any follow-up or explanation of what it was. I was just like, that sounds fun, and I would do it. I don't know. I feel like the decent diet and daily exercise helped, not cure, but helped like assuage a lot of the symptoms of the ADHD. So I was kind of more on point after we did like our daily workout. Like in the morning, we'd wake up and like eat something and then go work out and then eat some more food. And I think like because of all that stimulation, I was always just like ready to go. And I actually became the leader. Like I was in charge of my platoon at basic for most of the basic. And maybe that was why, because like I was just so on point because of all the stimulation, and I was just so ready to get stuff done and be active and helpful. But yeah, the military life for sure, the structure and the regiment definitely helps the ADHD. Outside of the military, I've had 30 jobs.
That's a lot.
I'm 26 years old. I've had 30 jobs, and it's because like I would just show up one day and be like, this isn't fun. I'm not enjoying this. And then I would just impulsively quit the job and then try to find another one. And I would say yes to any opportunity. So like I spent time catering events. I was the audio technical engineer for a teen church in Daytona Beach, Florida. I spent time as a girls rec soccer coach and a referee. I was a freelance photographer and videographer. Like I've done editing. Like I've done so much. I worked on 2 different food trucks.
Did you have like a favorite?
A favorite food truck or just a favorite job?
Favorite job minus like your current job.
Oh, that's rough. I got some weird ones for sure. I was the cow at Chick-fil-A when I was 16. I drove a bus for the YMCA, and I was their like after school camp counselor. And that one was probably the most out there for me. Nobody was really expecting that one to happen, but I was really good at it.
That sounds cool. Yeah. And I understand what you were saying about the structure earlier. Like I've heard from a lot of people that like college is a lot more difficult because of the structure, kind of, because high school has a lot more structure to it.
And there's nobody that's structuring it for you. That is the hard part, is making your own schedule and then forcing yourself to stick to it. Military, there's always some guy yelling at you to stick to your schedule.
Okay. And then, so do you have any specific stories that you feel like really shows what it's like to have ADHD?
Besides the ones that I've already said, oh man, not anything jumping off the top of my head. I think that is actually a pretty good example, honestly, because listen, my memory is Swiss cheese. The ADHD and the trauma held hands and walked through my memory, and we're like, well, we're not doing that one today. I don't remember. I'm the easiest person in the world to gaslight because I've just accepted this fact about myself, is that whatever I say or do, I'll probably just forget that I've done it or said it in a week. So multiple times people have come up to me and be like, hey, you said this to me. And I was like, okay. I don't remember saying that, but I believe you. So I'm sorry. Yeah. It's got me in a little bit of trouble. But at this point, I've just learned to accept what they've told me as true and move on from there.
But yeah, you already talked a little bit about your careers and stuff, but do you think ADHD has helped you in your careers, both current and past?
I get asked this at shows a lot, if ADHD helps. And my general response is yes, ADHD helps me in my career the same way that like being a paraplegic is beneficial because you don't have to buy shoes or pants anymore. Okay. Like you may not have legs, but you're saving some money. And that's how I tell people it is with ADHD, where it's like, Yeah, the negatives far outweigh the positives here.
Yeah.
I have to take daily medication just to stay a little bit on track with stuff. I have a notebook that I carry around with me, and it's just every day I write down the stuff that I have to get done, and the list never ends because I keep remembering randomly things that I have to do. Yeah. And then also sometimes I look at the list and I go, no.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that actually, because like I have a planner at times and then I forget about the planner sometimes and fall off track with it. Yeah, so it's kind of hard to stay on top of it, but doing my best. And then, is there a specific part of ADHD that you feel needs to be addressed more?
Everything except for the lack of focus. Okay. Nobody talks about anything other than the fact that we can't focus on things. And it's so annoying because that is the least of my worries. I think the biggest one that nobody talks about is probably the lack of object permanence. If you just move something outside of my line of sight, my brain's like, well, that doesn't exist anymore. I'm so wildly forgetful, and it goes so much deeper than just like forgetting where I put my water bottle. For people that listen to this, I'm sure like everybody that listens to this podcast probably has ADHD, so they understand what I'm about to say. But like if there's somebody out there that doesn't have ADHD and you're like, I wonder what that's like, listen, the object permanence applies to so much more than just objects. I forget people exist regularly. I will meet somebody and I'll be like, yeah, that was fun. And then I will forget that I hung out with them. I've been on a lot of first dates and very few that I remember. Okay. It's rough. And the other thing, this is the part that I think even people with ADHD don't really think about. It also applies to feelings and emotions. So if your friend hasn't told you that they love you lately, guess who forgot that their friend loves them? It's us. We forgot that. We haven't perceived it in a minute, which plays into rejection sensitive dysphoria, which is another symptom of ADHD, where we just think everyone hates us all the time for no reason. So you forget people exist. You forget how they feel about you. You feel worse about it. And then I don't know where you fall on this spectrum, but the time blindness spectrum. Yeah. I am about as time blind as you get. I have no perception of the passing of time, which is cool because I don't get jet lagged, which is interesting.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But it does not help with the RSD because I'll be like, oh man, my friend hasn't texted me in months, and I'll look and it'll be like 3 days ago.
Yeah, I forget to text back most of the time because I'm like, oh, I'm going to respond. And then I put my phone down and forget about it.
Yep. But I have to leave things unread so that I see the notification later when I have the energy and the effort to actually respond. Yeah. But that doesn't work because then I'll look again. There'll be like 100 unread text messages and I'll be like, well, we're not going to do that today.
Yeah. But yeah, I actually recently talked about RSD on this with my brother who also has ADHD because I have a sister who doesn't, but my brother and I both do. So it's kind of chaotic.
Lucky duck. What's it like? I have no idea.
It's just interesting because she's the oldest too, and so she just has two younger siblings that both are kind of all over the place all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I know that RSD is a big one, but the object permanence thing, I feel like I understand that, but I haven't really thought about it too much, honestly.
Oh, that is the worst one because you just forget everything. You don't for meetings, appointments, people, feelings, water bottles. I have lost so many water bottles.
Yeah, same.
This one stuck with me the longest, and I don't know how. But here it is.
Yeah, I've lost a lot of water bottles, honestly, but I don't know where they are, so.
No one will.
And then how do you stay on top of your workload? You already showed the list of things you have to do, but is there something else you do?
Well, I take Vyvanse, which for people that don't know is like a more expensive Adderall. It's a softer Adderall. I think the side effects are much more mild for me. Mm-hmm. Like when I was on Adderall, I got nauseous anytime I would look at food. Whereas Vyvanse, I can eat. Like I still don't have an appetite, but I can eat when I'm on Vyvanse. So the Vyvanse for sure helps. I also now have like a team of people that keep me on track. So like I'll get messages in the mornings from like my manager and my editing team, and they'll be like, hey, we need this done by this day. We need to have this done by there. But I've been doing this for so long now that like I have my schedule. I made my schedule, and now I've gotten pretty decent at like forcing myself to stick to my schedule as best as possible. Maybe that's just sheer willpower. Maybe that's Vyvanse. Maybe that's military. But whatever it is, I've got whatever it is I need in here to make me stick to a schedule for the most part.
Do you think that it helps with like the accountability factor, having other people and like to help remind you?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. Have you heard of body doubling? Yes, I love body doubling. I actually run or host, not really run, but I host like a writing and like working group session every week at my house. So I invite all my like creator friends over, and we just kind of like sit around and talk shop, talk ideas, and work on our own things near each other. And just having all of those people around working, so much stuff gets done.
Yeah, I feel like that would be helpful. I know I do better work in situations like that, even if sometimes it's a little distracting. The silence is honestly more distracting. So, And then do you tell people that you have ADHD, and like if they ask, or just if it comes up?
If it comes up, mostly like I think more often than not, it's as part of like an explanation or an apology for a weird quirk or symptom, side effect, whatever that I have, where, you know, somebody reach out and be like, hey, haven't heard from you in a week. And I'll be like, sorry, I have ADHD. I kind of forgot that my phone existed. Stuff like that. Like out here in LA, in such a big creative space, most people that I've met have ADHD. So it's a lot easier to just be like, sorry, I have ADHD. And they just kind of go, yeah, same. And then we bond over that. And it's way less stigmatized out here, especially in the entertainment field, because everyone's got something. I do know that my dad didn't believe that I had ADHD. Like, I'm not sure if he believes that it exists at all. It took me a while to convince him that I had something. And the biggest thing that helped me explain that to him, or had him like understand finally, was when I told him how bad my memory was, and that I don't remember most of the stuff that he remembers of my childhood, which hurt him the most, but it also helped him like come to terms with, oh, maybe my son is a little bit broken.
Yeah, it's always kind of hard in that sense, because like even for me, my younger brother, he was diagnosed before me, and I was only diagnosed because when they were in there, they were like, oh, there's a lot of the symptoms here that she has also, maybe we should look into that. So I was diagnosed a little bit later. 2 for 1,
and that is the other definition of twice exceptional.
Yeah, and then, but I know that you kind of mentioned that there's a lot of other people that have ADHD. I feel like for me, at least, after I was diagnosed, I kind of find myself in groups where a lot of people have it more often. And it's kind of interesting. It's like weird, but.
Now, here's the interesting question for that. Do you now find yourself in different groups where people have ADHD, or are you still in the same groups? You just know what it looks like now?
It's probably a mix of both, because part of it was just lots of friend group changing and stuff, but in general, I still think even before I knew what it was, I was probably surrounding myself with lots of people that have ADHD.
We have a way of finding each other.
And then, have you faced any stereotypes because of the ADHD?
Not so much in the entertainment field.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest one was probably just my dad not believing that it was real for a while. But this is more of a personal, like just Ben thing. I don't care. I'm an absurdist philosophically.
Okay.
Which means that I believe nothing is real except for the chaos of the universe. My general outlook on life is that the universe is a box and everything in it is a cat. So if you think that if you have weird stereotypes about me just because you know that I have ADHD, yeah, I don't care. You have your opinions and I know who I am. So if you want to have weird opinions about me that don't match up with who I am, that won't take any skin off my nose. You're just going to feel weird when I don't change. And then you continue to have incorrect opinions about me.
Okay. That's kind of an interesting take on it. I mean, I kind of already knew that a little bit about you because I'm a fan of your podcast also. And that leads into the next question, which is, I know that you have your own podcast with The Good, the Dan, the Florida Man with Ryan and Dan. And so what's it like working on a podcast with 3 different people who all have ADHD?
It is rough. It is so rough. I was the first one on the podcast to be diagnosed and get medication. And I kind of helped both Ryan and Dan go to get their diagnosis and their medicine. So they both are medicated now as well. I don't like that phrase. They both have medicine now. And they take it. So it got a little bit easier when they were able to function properly. But up until then it was kind of like I did everything for the podcast. Like I was the one that had to schedule stuff. I had to set up all of the studio equipment. Like I had to do so much just to get that podcast going every week. And we've taken a bit of a hiatus because we all got really busy, but we're scheduling another episode to film this coming Saturday. So, and I didn't plan that one. Ryan texted the group and was like, "Hey, we need to do this. Let's go." And so I think we're starting to come over that curve of just like, oh, now the other two are learning what it's like to function on medicine regularly, and hopefully they'll be able to take some more initiative with the podcast.
I'm assuming that's part of the reason why episodes don't always come out on time, though, is just because trying to schedule everything. You guys are all very busy, obviously.
Yeah.
And then I know when you were younger, you've mentioned it a lot, that you played a lot of sports. Do you think that like helped you with the ADHD?
Yes, absolutely. There's many studies out there by now that corroborate the idea that exercise, specifically cardio, I believe, helps stimulate the brain in the way that your understimulated brain needs to function properly for ADHD. It's not a long-term fix by any means, but for the most part, if you start your day exercising or you exercise at some point during the day, your ADHD symptoms will be minimized for a little bit, for a brief period of time. So just constantly being such an active kid. We grew up really poor in Florida, so I was always outside doing stuff, running, playing soccer, basketball, whatever. So I was always out there exercising, and I do think it for sure helped. There was still a lot of stuff that I wasn't really able to do well. Like I couldn't read good. And for the longest time, I thought I was just bad at reading, and it turns out I am, but for a different reason. Like I was smart. Like I was reading at an 8th grade level in 1st grade, but I couldn't remember what I had just read. So now I do audiobooks, and it's like, oh, wow, crazy how somebody else can read this to me while I'm driving or cleaning or whatever. And I know what's going on and I can retain it. But the exercise, I think a lot of little things, it did help.
Yeah, I exercise. I'm a swimmer right now because I'm not that good at most of the other sports, honestly. But I like doing
Swimming's
swim.
rough.
Yeah, it's
It's a
fun
full
though.
body exercise.
Yeah, it's still fun. I like doing that, but I feel like I'm always busy. But honestly, when I'm busier, I feel like I get more work done than when I have
Yep.
free time. Because when I have
It's the
free
constant
time,
stimulation.
yeah, when I have free time, I feel like it's really hard to start work. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like that's the hardest part for me is starting stuff because I know I have to do stuff, but like trying to
Yeah.
start.
One of the things that I've learned helps is like I put my phone on like do not disturb or like work mode, and then I just put it out of sight. So like under a blanket or in a drawer or just in a different room, and I'll just forget my phone exists, and that helps me kind of like stay on task with the actual work that I need to get done.
Yeah, with me, I find that usually music actually helps me get started with the work at least. And with most work, I can just keep music on. There's a few things like trying to read that I'm like, this is not going to work. But I think
the way that I kind of describe it to people, I imagine my brain is in like two sections. There's an 80% and a 20%. And they both need to be stimulated for me to properly do tasks. So like the 80% is a task that requires like focus, like a big amount of brain energy, like reading, where I actually have to pay attention to the words and retain them, blah, blah, blah. And there's like the 20% that are mindless tasks. So mindless tasks to me are like driving or cleaning or, you know, things like that. And so I need an 80% task happening in my brain to help me finish 20% tasks. So if I'm cleaning or driving, I listen to an audiobook because that takes up my brain space. Where if it's the other way around, where I'm like, I'm writing, I will listen to music in the background because that takes up the 20%.
Yeah. So your brain just needs to constantly be busy, basically, in order to get two stuff things done. Yeah. And then you mentioned cleaning. Have you ever like had the times where you get hyper focused on cleaning or hyper fixated on cleaning? Because I know that happens to me a lot where I'm in the middle of a task and then I go like clean out my closet.
Yep. I just moved into this new house about a month ago, and I just found out that I have ants. And so we're getting an exterminator come out and spray the area for sure. But I found I was like, okay, time to deep clean the entire house. And so that's what I did for the next 4 hours. I just cleaned everything with like bleach and Clorox wipes and vinegar. That was not on my plate that day.
For your videos, do you often film like a lot of them in a row, or is it more like spread out and on a schedule?
So usually I write a lot throughout the week, and then come like Monday, I'll film 2 or 3 of them. And then throughout the week, sometimes I'll film a couple more. That more so depends on what I have to do that week. Because if it's a normal week where I don't do anything, yeah, I film everything on Monday. Sometimes I'll film like an extra couple things on Tuesday. But if I have to travel, like I leave again next Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, I leave in 6 days and I'll be gone for 3 weeks. So now I'm on overdrive where I'm writing more and filming more pretty much every day until then, because I have to get 3 weeks worth of content filmed and done.
You're on the road a lot, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I love it. Stand-up comedy was my first love, and I don't think I ever want to stop doing it. But man, some days I just wish I could stay at home.
So you've traveled to a lot of different places then, at least in the United States?
Yeah, every state except for Hawaii so far.
That's really cool. I've been to, I don't know, a lot of states, but not like all of them, especially not in like the middle of the United States.
Listen, if you've been to one Midwest state, you've been to them all.
Okay. I was born in Michigan, so.
There you go. You've done it.
Yeah. Is there like a favorite place you visited, or does it kind of just depend?
I think this ties into a lot of the memory problems. I don't remember a whole lot of specifics about any of my travels. If you ask me like for very specifics, like, hey, what did you do while you were in Louisville? I've gotten to a point now where I try to see stuff. Every time I travel to a new city, I try to see like their attraction, and have a good time doing that. But nothing really stands out all too much.
I know you were in Arizona at Tempe in like December, I think. I wasn't in town at the time, but I saw that you had a show here. What did you think of Arizona?
It's big desert, big dry hot desert.
Yeah,
I got here than I think people expect it to be. The Grand Canyon is gorgeous, but I mean, it's just a lie. It's just a big desert. Nobody should be living there.
Yeah, I've been living here for a long time, almost all of my life. So like I'm kind of used to it, but it gets really hot in the summers.
Oh yeah, no, I can imagine.
It was like 100 degrees this morning.
Oh, that's fine. It's a dry heat. You'll be all right.
Yeah. And then, do you have any advice for people to like what they should do when they talk to people with ADHD, or like things they should avoid?
I have some advice, but I think the best piece of advice I can give is ask them what they need, because everybody has different symptoms. There's so many symptoms of ADHD, and there's so many different ways to help people who have it. I know a big thing that helps me is when people, if you don't ask me questions like, what is your favorite this or that? You have to ask me like questions that have definite answers. Like, hey, what is the first concert you went to? Instead of like, what is your favorite concert? And that kind of helps me, because I don't really have favorites. It's all just kind of a big cloud of whatever, of mush. And so if you ask me a definite answer of just like, hey, what was the last book you read? What is the book you're reading now? Those are better questions to ask than what is your favorite book?
That makes sense. Yeah. I'm trying to think, and I can't even remember the last book I read.
Oh, I have to pull it up. I have an app. I just go to my Audible and I look at my library and go, it was Thief of Time by Terry Pratchett.
Yeah.
Which I think it was.
I think it's my summer reading book, but that's fine. And then that's most of the questions I have. So is there anything else you want to say to the listeners?
I thank you guys for listening. This is such a cool concept. I love talking about mental health, and I love spreading any tips, tricks, advice, and helpfulness that I can to help people, especially if you like, maybe you have a new ADHD diagnosis and you're like, oh, that's a new thing that I just learned about myself. This is what I love. I want to get more into it. So I'm happy that you have me on. I'm thankful for the listeners that do listen.
And then finally, where can people like find you on the internet?
Oh, okay. I was going to say the grocery store, but let's see. You can just find me. I have a website you can check out. It's benbrainard.com. And my last name is spelled brain, like the one in your head, ARD. And on there, I have all of my social media links. So it's just a one-stop shop. It's basically my link tree. It's just my website.
Okay. Thank you.